Coming up in episode 18 of Netball Unlocked, we look back on our interview with Adelaide Thunderbirds General Manager of High Performance, Jace Bode. Plenty of fascinating insights there. We also take a look back at round 9 in the Netball Super League as the top 4 take shape. And there's a look ahead to round 10 with games running out. Welcome along then to the latest episode of Netball Unlocked. And Chloe, just you and I today. No fancy guests, no big name superstars, just you and me.
Nowhere to hide, Paul. Just
yeah, look, I think at some point we kind of have said we'd like to get into the tactics and things like that. So we thought that today might represent a good opportunity for that. Never fear though, we are working away behind the scenes. We've got a few more names that we're hoping to bring you before the season finishes, and some exciting ones as well. But firstly, a bit of a plea, which always sounds a bit desperate, but we are new to this, and I usually leave it till the end of the pod. But we've made a really good impression on everybody so far, and we're so flattered, we're so thrilled, and we can't believe it, right, Chloe? We've had such a positive response to what we're doing, not least the sort of Jace Bode interview, which we'll get stuck into shortly. But because of all of this, you know the way it works. We need reviews and we need kind of ratings. All these sorts of things help us massively. Like, it helps our reach, helps us pop up in people's timelines. So if you like what we do, if you're enjoying what we do, just drop a few words together on whatever platform it might be, to kind of let them know that you're enjoying it. Let us know if there's a particular episode that you like, and drop us a rating as well. And subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't. We do have hopes at some point of evolving the YouTube offering, but let's not run before we can walk, hey, Chloe?
absolutely. I mean, the graphics department and the booking department and all of that is still very, very busy. So, no, but I could just want to come off the back of what you said. Like, we love hearing when you love an episode or a thought or a guest. So, yeah, just get involved. As Tanya Obbs once said, like, we love that in whatever form. And, you know, recommend us to a mate as well.
Yes.
Some of you be playing netball. There must be 6 other people on your team that could listen. So, yeah.
One would like to think so, right?
Indeed.
Before we get stuck into sort of round 9 and then take a look ahead to round 10, firstly, like, as if we're at this stage of the season already, which seems remarkable, really, want to take a little look back at the Jace Bode interview, which you and I are both very excited about because we're sporting nerds. What were your big picture takeaways? Because we obviously did the interview, which is available in your feeds. What were your big picture takeaways, Chloe? Because there was a lot in there.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't mean it when we first sort of put out the request to try and get someone like Jace on. We didn't realise that it would time with one of the biggest shake-ups in SSN, which was the announcement of Shamira Sterling-Humphrey's pregnancy. And we spoke about that with Jason, and he was incredibly honest about the way the timeline unfolded, and to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, so eloquently put, and to really understand the sensitivities around it and why things maybe on the surface didn't look so transparent from their end, I think was really quite incredible to get that off from him off the bat as well. And that was awesome, I think, to hear that, and then to hear how exciting and how excited they are about San Marie Visser, and also Paul, the network that the Thunderbirds are operating with globally in terms
of... Blew me away straight away,
yeah. Like, hunting talent and, you know, have their ears to the ground. I think that's such a little wake-up call to everybody else, that the reigning 2-time defending champions are not ever resting on their laurels. They are forward-thinking. And that was the other big thing I think I took from it, Paul, was how restless Jace's job is and how forward-thinking he has to be, and probably how many years ahead he's already thinking. You know, you and I are dealing with round 9 of a Super League. He's probably imagining round 9 of SSN in 4 years' time. So that was just really exciting. But I know you quite enjoyed his Aussie charm, Paul. What did you take away from it?
Yeah, I never cease to learn when we kind of, not just we, but like in all of us in our jobs, when you learn from people who work at the very, very top level. And I thought Jace's background from AFL, from cricket, and now in netball was just a really fascinating insight into kind of bringing all those learnings to one club, one sport, if you like, as well. And I feel like we know this, but I do feel like it just again illustrates like where the NSL is at the moment in terms of those behind the scenes people. And, you know, we've been fortunate so far over the course of this first season that we've been doing this to speak to people who've been involved in the game for such a long time. But I came away thinking, how fantastic would it be? And maybe we saw this a bit with the Rhinos' response to the whole Super League kind of situation, which I suppose we have to discuss as well, because like the Rhinos' response and the league's response came out after we recorded our last podcast. I feel like that presence of kind of there's more to this than just netball. This is about high performance, right? I felt like that was my big picture takeaway, and that was like from minuscule bits and pieces to kind of letting us know what girls were doing before their game. Like just the next morning, he was kind of watching on from the sidelines, and we were lucky to speak to him in that capacity. To, as you've already mentioned, like the scouting nature of it, which I think some of us in netball probably assume doesn't happen, but clearly it does, right? But to hear someone talk about it in such a candid manner. And then what I thought was really good at the end was where we sort of asked Jace a little bit about his kind of big picture stuff. And he was really honest as a general manager of a team like T-Birds, saying that, you know, you don't want to give up your best players, but maybe if in the future there was a chance for a Shamira Sterling to play in an NSL and a Suncorp season, depending on how calendars matched up, he would have to kind of think more big picture of it, which I thought was really humbling, to be fair. I thought I was a bit like, okay, you've got your T-Birds hat on here, but you've also got your netball hat on. And I feel like we're all desperate to hear from those people, or hear from people in those positions, those kind of sentiments a little bit more, because I think we all want to see the sport grow on a higher level. And who better than the kind of general manager of those high performance levels than the T-Birds to kind of say it as it was. But yeah, I've listened back to it a couple of times, and I hate listening back to myself, but mainly because of Jace, not me. And it was brilliant. It was a really fascinating hour. It could have gone on for another hour or two, to be fair. I had loads more questions.
Yeah, so did I. And it maybe, you know, in the future we get him back to check in. But honestly,
we get over. How do we get over?
maybe let's do a live from Australia.
Netball on the road.
Honestly, if we just urge you to listen to it. If you haven't already, get stuck in, give it a plug into it, and let us know what you think, because just really great. I think to have that outside opinion as well, to know that there are levels to netball and how big it's going to get, and also like commercially what they're doing as well, and that sort of bigger picture stuff too. So yes, I feel this is a plug.
So that's Jace, as in we could sit for another hour and talk about our learnings from it. We should talk about the Rhinos situation. I'm sure everybody who listens knows by now, but effectively the result stands. I don't think anyone is surprised by that. Obviously, we don't need to go over it all, but the super shot that was not a super shot is essentially what kind of prompted Leeds' appeal. When we recorded our last pod with Ella Powell-Davis, we had a pretty big conversation about what it meant going forward. I was a little bit disappointed by Super League's statement. I get it. I get they kind of had to play it straight down the line. I've dealt with enough governing body statements down the line to know that's how this goes. And I think I alluded to the fact that I felt the response to the response was going to be the most interesting part of it. And I thought Rhinos and Dan Busfield handled it brilliantly. I thought the statement was really clear. It implied what they had tried to argue, what they had tried to convey to the league, but then more broadly, what their hopes were for what it would mean going forward. And I suppose that's the next part of this, right? We don't know what will happen next. We know from the Rhino statement, but not from anything from NSL, that it seems there's going to be some sort of conversation about what happens going forward, but we've not had any significant information like from the league on how that will look. So I suppose maybe that's a question for the NSL and for England Netball.
Yeah, and I think even if we didn't get anything concrete out of them, one big thing that I certainly picked up, and I think a lot of others did too at the weekend, was the clarity with which the umpires were calling ones and twos. I think credit to them, they took a knock unfairly, I think, from some quarters for what happened, given, as we explained in the context in the last episode, they are paid. It is just expenses. There is a scrutiny on this now. We're professionalizing. They are such a big part of that picture. So there's some nice solidarity pieces seen from Team White, which was great. But yeah, like, they are making it clear as well as a group that, Gary Burgess, I think, was so crisp with his ones and twos. That is the standard, and that's what they're going to do to be absolutely as clear as possible. And I do believe now players can it can be checked. I don't know if it's the players, but the official, I believe now the umpire can check with the technical bench whether that was registered as a 1 or a 2. Like, they've made that clear. But yeah, look, we know from the conversations we've been having and from people watching the game, and then now from that statement from a club, that there should be some sort of learning from this. What that looks like, we'll see. But I just don't think it's going to stay the same as it was. But let's hope. Fingers crossed.
I think the first 2 lines, and I've got the statement up now, which is why you might have been able to see me tapping away. I think the first 2 lines of it were really interesting. The whole statement was really very good. He said, although we are disappointed with the verdict, we do accept that the competition committee within the NSL regulations handbook does not permit the review of match footage to change or amend a match outcome or umpire decision. NIC Leeds Rhinos Netball welcome the committee's commitment to have a further follow-up to address the issue of the in-venue score, to ensure there is a clear understanding between teams and officials on any discrepancies in such circumstances. Now, that's interesting, because at the weekend we had a bit of an example of that, didn't we? At the end of the which game was it again? I can't remember. It was the end of the Mavs Pulse game.
Yeah,
when the score in the arena was different to the score on the desk, which I think in turn would have been wrong on the score clock in the corner. It's 2025. This is Netball 2.0. Can we just have the score correct in the places that it needs to be correct? That doesn't feel like that should be a stretch. And I think this kind of alludes to that as well, because I think that's an underrated part of what happened in the sort of Panthers Rhinos game. Because the scoreboard had registered one thing, it stopped Rhinos from doing another thing. And we can get into the weeds and unravel lots and lots of it. But ultimately, the decision to award 1 over 2 is where the whole thing fell down, and it kind of messed up the scoring. The review system was part of it. So yeah, it's how all of that evolves going forward. And it would be good if at some point we see some sort of statement as to what that's going to look like. Not necessarily a statement, but some sort of action that we know. Because at the moment, it's not very clear, is it? We've had to ask a few times on whether a bonus point was awarded when games go to extra time, because nobody could find that information out. We asked and we got an answer. That's how these things work. But yeah, I think in this instance, it'll be interesting to see what comes next. And if we get a repeat, God help us all.
Please, Paul. Please, no. But in other good news.
And it was a good news for Netball weekend, wasn't it? Streams were all fine. Quality of Netball was good. And
we have 2 Thunder babies. Congratulations to Nat Metcalf and Laura Malcolm on the births of baby Miller and baby Marcella. So just happy days. I can't believe they were born on the same day. It's
remarkable,
just it's incredible, isn't it?
Really cool. I remember seeing them on the bench at one point earlier this season, both being pregnant next to each other. And now, after the news we got at the weekend, it was like, were they in the same hospital? Were they in the same ward? Were they next to each other? This is an amazing story.
Will they play on the same team together, side by side?
A mini Metcalf and a mini Malcolm.
Yeah, gosh, imagine. Well, we have seen, daughters come on now. Yeah. So, I think it's, super exciting. And we're just delighted for both of them that everything was happy and healthy. So, yes, good news.
All good news. And before we get into the game-by-game stuff, Chloe, what were your top-line takeaways? It was a big weekend for me. I think I mentioned it last week. I thought it could really shape what might have been a really exciting top four battle. We still could have that, but Panthers losing, Forest losing, and Mavs losing, I suppose, has kind of now almost clarified that gap between the top three, who look like they're going to be battling it out for sort of top first and second place, and the advantages that come with that. And it does now look like it's probably going to be a straight shootout between Forest and Mavericks for that kind of fourth spot. I think Panthers, with the game in hand, might have thought if they could beat Dragons, and a huge well done to Dragons for the first victory of the season, they might have been able to generate a little bit of momentum. But I feel like Panthers might look back on that defeat as the time that maybe their realistic hopes of the top four had gone.
Yeah, I think in response to what you've just laid out there, Mr. I can make a story out of a table.
You can.
You can, and you just did perfectly. Is as the cynic might go, well, would you look at that top three teams back at the top again?
Yeah.
But I think that would be a disservice to the performance that I think Thunder put out, given that they turned out to be without Amy Carter, and what we established was a really critical game from a team that had felled Pulse and Lightning. So that was it felt to me like a really significant win. The game against Mavericks versus Pulse, like, wow, quite breathless in the end. And then, yeah, as you pointed to, that Dragons win in Coventry, in the ice, on the ice, around the ice. Having been around some ice myself recently, I did feel for the fans because it can be pretty cold. But yeah, like that was, some really exciting action. Really interesting to watch that. So I think a positive round. The overall picture, maybe less exciting. I don't know. Like you said, that there is a battle for fourth, but it does, yeah, as you've said, look like top three. We have our familiar friends in that department.
And look, I think we all probably would have accepted that was probably going to be the case this season. But and as you alluded to it there, I do think that does a little bit of a disservice to sort of the challenges that those teams have had to face. You know, Pulse kind of have come through some tough games over the last few weeks, and you know they were knocked off top spot for the first time, managed to respond and take top spot again. Lightning, we asked questions of in the first few rounds, really, didn't we? It was like things hadn't quite gelled. They are now really starting to click and really moving through the gears. Thunder have had to come through like the various injury challenges that they've come through, but all three have emerged to stand sort of clear of everybody as kind of, we'd be surprised if the champions didn't come from them three, and I think they've earned that right, not just in what they've done this season, but in the kind of pedigree that they've put on table for the last couple of years. Yeah,
I wouldn't want to separate them now.
Yeah,
I think that's what's still quite exciting.
Totally agree.
In the race for four definitely is exciting, but I think then trying to separate out the three and I think the new format definitely means that we have a competition within a competition. So still absolutely lots to look forward to, but I guess, like I said, if you're a cynic and you're looking back at it and you're going, well, quelle surprise. But anyway, we should move on to the games.
Should we get into them? Yeah, let's get into them, and let's give Dragons their props. We'll start with them. It was a game on Friday night. Panthers 57, Dragons 61. Panthers do get a bonus point out of it, which I think is always worth pointing out because these points could prove crucial come the end of the season. A first win of the season for Dragons. A topsy-turvy game that kind of went this way and that. I kind of watched it. I think I watched it on Sunday morning. I was super impressed again by that defensive end from Dragons, but I feel like the key to it all for me was Elle McDonald. She just kind of she's gone from strength to strength over the last few weeks. She's really nailed down the wing defence position as well. And as much as losing Liam Middleton to that horrendous injury was a big we thought it might be a big problem, I think Dragons deserve a huge amount of credit for rebuilding that defensive identity with Elle dropping back to wing defence, Jackie Newton being the rock that she is at goal defence, and Alex Johnson really stepping up. I think Ella alluded to it last week, and Kerry Ormond a few weeks previous. I think everyone was quite excited to see what it might mean for Alex Johnson, and she again had a really good game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what was really interesting about this game was I felt we saw why Georgia Rowe and Ziggy Berger do have a place in this league.
Yeah, it's really fair.
Because they were both really accurate. I mean, there was still ball being won off them, but in a goal for goal game, as this game did kind of go, well, like how helpful to have that tall, strong Timber doing that job. And I think both have had head loss moments, errors at critical moments. They've both struggled with the super shot. We did see another dab from Ziggy Berger. Excellent. But I think actually you can see why they have their places in their teams and how useful they are. Because one thing that really struck me about Dragons in this game, as you pointed, Elle McDonald, just really the way she won ball, where she won ball, and such a crucial cog in the attack. The way she brings the ball down off the centre pass to set up that speedy play for Dragons, that ball to make the defence on Georgia Rowe that bit harder, was just on top of the turnover that she found when she found it was brilliant. But I think also their unforced error count in this game was like 3. And this is what we sat here with Claire Jones and said, how do you tell a team to stop making mistakes? Well, they're not making many mistakes there. So that was really exciting to see that. And we did talk about them progressing. And that really felt like, in the end, actually, with a team that can shoot super shots as well.
Yeah.
Like Panthers have been very good at that. And I think this was probably a game where Betsy Creek and Jess Shaw probably weren't at the standards that they've been operating at. I mean, I say that Jess Shaw was finding Ziggy Berger for some great ball, but Elle McDonald walks away with Pom and a really big deserving Pom, so she's done a job there. And I think Betsy Creek maybe wasn't finding the super shot so easily as she had been. So I think Dragons did a really good job of unpicking her and the force that she's been. And I think, we have to also probably say Gabby Sinclair was not available for this game.
Yeah.
So that's probably quite a big part, and will be really interesting when these two teams meet again, because they do meet again very soon, given the fact that this game is going to have to be replayed. So that will be really interesting, the turnaround tactically from both sides. But look, I thought it was a good one. It was a nice one for Dragons' first win, for it to be that way, to have been hard fought, and to come out of the side of a class team. And I think the other thing really, Paul, that I'd probably highlight is the penalty count from Panthers.
Yeah,
serious.
It hadn't occurred to me that, because I wasn't watching in real time. I think when you don't watch in real time, you're kind of a little bit fast forward in your head. I hadn't noticed it until you pointed it out, and then we usually get the stats like a day or two after, and I sort of spun through them and saw the details, and it was a bit like, blimey, yeah, that was a high count.
Yeah, Gabby Coffey was on 20 penalties, I think.
I didn't see there was no warning either, was there?
No, I don't believe so. Or there wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah, it was just interesting. There was a lot accumulated, but nothing really like warning or escalation. So just an interesting one there. But I think that tells you that Panthers were trying really, really hard to win the ball. And I think, actually, to be fair to Jazz Brown, she did turn over quite a bit of ball, but it was just that, converting it. I don't think the turnover to goal would have been where Panthers would have wanted it to be. But yeah, an interesting game. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I think your point on the shooters is a really good one. I think we've both kind of at various points this season not defended, because they don't need to be defended, but Siggy and Georgia absolutely have a role to play. I think the question was how maybe tactics evolve around it. And I think one thing I noticed, over the weekend, was that, and maybe this has been happening a little bit longer than I realised, it does seem like teams are now being a little bit more comfortable taking the one in the 2-point kind of window, and not just when you've turned the ball over, take the one because it's almost a bonus one, or whatever kind of big picture take you want to look at it. It felt to me that teams were confident in, okay, we'll take our one here and we'll turn the game around. I don't know what you thought, but I thought that was a little bit obvious in this game, maybe because we know what strengths Siggy and Georgia have. But I think it's something that we're starting to see percolate through the league a bit more as well.
No, I completely agree. I mean, it's a feel and not a real comment, because don't have the. It would be great to have a chart of it, but it does feel like we're not taking so many, and I wonder if that is a learning and a like use it as and when you need it rather than just using it because you can. But there was, and also like I think the defense is getting better as well.
People, you give people stuff to look at, right? We said this a few times. You give good coaches a chance to look at how a team have been playing or a team have been using certain things. And I think it's really evident now. And even my wife, who was watching it with me, was like, oh, you can see they're really trying to keep them up at this point and almost force them to take a super shot. You're right. The tactical side of that is really starting to emerge now.
Sure. So that was game 1. Then game 2 takes us to David Wallace in Loughborough. Lightning got a 71-59 victory over Leeds Rhinos. Lightning now moving to second in the table, 5 wins in a row. Paul, what do you reckon? Are they back?
Yeah, I think they're really going through the gears, Lightning. I feel like it happened after I spoke to Vic Burgess as well. I don't. I'm joking, clearly. No, look, I thought it was a really strong professional job from Lightning, and I think we're seeing that every single week. I feel like they've probably settled on their starting 7 as well now. Like, we know that Sammy Wallace-Joseph is fit. It looks like Shadeen gets the edge over Jody at goalkeeper, goal defence. But I do think there is an element of being able to adapt that depending on what you're up against. So I think if they were going up against maybe a speedier team or someone who might maybe play through the thirds a little bit faster, we might see Jody rather than Shadeen, who's obviously quite physical and offers a real presence alongside Alice Harvey. That becomes a real defence. But then you can change that up, and we've spoken about this a few times. How do you use your bench to change it up? And I think if you use the goal defence, wing defence partnership, Cobden and Gibson offer something different to Cobden and Van der Merwe, which I think is really important. But yeah, I think just a fairly routine job done really, really well from Lightning. I think Berry is getting increasingly confident as well. She's starting to showcase her talent. And if I listen back to Vic Burgess, Vic's theory was to allow Berry to kind of mature into the team, for want of a better description. And I think she had to play with Ella Clark to start with. We've known Sammy's story as she's kind of adjusted to things. And I think when you're moving into a new team, like, the last thing you need is a little bit of upheaval. But it does look like that Neil Wallace-Joseph pairing is working quite clearly. And I think for Rhinos, it feels like it's still very much more of the same. Lauren told us fairly early on in the season that they were making too many mistakes, and they tried to change it up. Sophie Egbaran started for the first time this year. We've seen her gradually kind of introduced from the bench. But to me, it just felt, and this was the last game I watched earlier on today, so I haven't been able to dig into the numbers as much, just felt like the kind of errors, and maybe they were forced into, just meant they were always kind of fighting a bit of a losing battle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you've said. I think, it just felt like Lightning really just sort of did their job, and they did their job really well, and they got it done. I do think what was interesting, like, we saw Bella Bayliss come on, and Nat Panigari shifted into wing defence, which is like a curious combination to see Beth Cobden out of that, because she's such a commanding wing defence. So interesting to see sort of Vic playing around with that. We saw Ella Clark come on. I do think going into the sort of sticky end of the season, how teams react to Lightning's changes, just because the personnel, Jodie Gibson and Ella Clark, if they are coming off the bench, like, that is just so tough, because they are going to come on with so much experience. So it's not a rotating cast where you're blooding in new players like, say, a Pulse, who start with their young ones on the bench. Like, Lightning, I haven't got that kind of squad. So it really is, I think, when you're going to come up against them, it's a matter of having several game plans ready. So, okay, Ella Clark comes on. What does that do to us? Like, which I think Lightning will relish, having those kind of different game plans out there. But yeah, I think, I guess Rhinos left a lot to be desired, I think. But I will take my hat off to Cassie Howard's never say die attitude. Like, it's just she just doesn't stop. She's just unrelenting. And I just think that's such an amazing quality to have. So, some bright moments for Rhinos for sure. But it just feels like Beth Britton, if she's not looked after, like, she's just such an obvious target for a team to go at Rhinos with. So, and I think that's what Lightning were doing. I think they were doing a really good job of making her life a bit miserable. So, like, it's just chugging along, aren't they, Lightning, getting it done?
Yeah, and I feel like for Rhinos, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Lauren's working with a squad that, maybe isn't well, we don't know, but it doesn't seem like it would be her first choice. And that's not personal. That's just the nature of circumstances that happened at Rhinos. I think when we spoke in the season preview about them finding an identity, it feels like, obviously we've got Jiva at one end and Joyce at the other end. It feels like then beyond that and beyond some Cassie Howard chaos, which is brilliant at causing, it feels like they're still struggling to pull that middle part of the court together. And I think the very obvious comparison here is the Lightning mid-court, which is so well trusted, so well tested at the highest level. I was going to ask you about your thoughts on Bella Bayliss, because we said we'd quite like to see a little bit more of her. I was interested to see them move Nat Panagari back to wing defence. It felt like a sensible decision, because I suppose of everybody in the squad, she's quite a like for Beth Cobden, like lots of energy, can get around the court, reads the game really well. But from an attacking point of view, what did you think maybe Bella added to the squad?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think Hannah Joseph was still there. Like, you don't, like, keeping her at wing attack is not going to shift things too much for you, because she's just such a... And that was actually something I did really notice is, and I'm sure other coaches will be looking at that, but Samantha Wallace-Joseph looks very specifically for Hannah Joseph. Like, when she's offloading a ball out of the circle, she only has eyes for Hannah, so that's going to be something someone's going to want to pick apart. But I don't know. I just think there's like a bit like how we talk about Thunder players coming through and playing a Thunder way. I think Bella Bayliss comes on and, as you said, like, slots in almost in a way that kind of fits. Like, it could be Nat Panagari playing. I don't know.
Yeah,
like, and I think
exactly what I thought.
Yeah, and I think that Nat also, you keep that leadership on the court at the back, calling things, commanding things at a wing defence. And maybe Bella, maybe Beth needed to come off. I don't know if that was, part of the plan, that it was to be that way round. But I just think it's just another iteration of this 10 that clearly just works really well. So it's, again, like and what an opportunity for someone like Bella Bayliss to come into such an experienced team with so much Super League experience around her. And to form a nice partnership with Berry.
I think that's a broader point as well, isn't it? It's like, I think when we ask to see these younger players emerge in the league and how they can slot in, it's so much easier in any sport to be able to slot into a really comfortable, well-established kind of setup. We've alluded to it with Pulse, that sort of Darcy, Gracie and Sophie Kelly can come on into a team where the structure and the patterns are set. Thunder, it kind of similar way, like the way they play is well set, and the players who come through the system know what to do and how to do it. Maybe a little bit kind of different for Lightning, because their squad is quite an experienced squad. So Bella's really the only youngster who kind of comes in and drops in. Obviously, Berry has come in, but she's starting straight away. But yeah, I thought it was. I thought, again, we don't need to overemphasize it, but a really job well done performance from Lightning, who took top spot with that win, it must be said. So the pressure at Wembley was on Pulse. which is a seamless transition to Mavericks 53, Pulse 63. A game that I thought had a little bit of everything. It was a bit frantic at times. It was a bit nervous at times. And part of me wondered if that was maybe the environment, because the seats were a bit higher up. Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but there was like that sort of black curtain that went all the way around the bottom. And I wondered if like some of those mistakes, and there were a lot of mistakes early, were kind of framed by that slightly different vision for the players. I wasn't there, so I didn't get a chance to ask anyone that. But I think once the game settled down, Pulse did probably just about enough to keep Mavs at arm's length throughout. And every time it looked like Mavs had enough to come back, and they did come back on a couple of occasions. Got to level it up, got to within 2 or 3 when the lead had blown out for a bit. But there were again just some crucial errors, like at really pivotal times for Mavericks. But a really good game, and I think Mavs needed it, because the first game was such a kind of washout, and it really was. This was a super competitive game between two very good squads.
Yeah, look, maybe this is going to come quite hard on Mavericks, but Ellie Ratu made some really big mistakes very early on, feeding the ball into the circle, and she's been doing that for quite a while now, and she's still starting. And she is an England Rose, and centre is a position she plays for England. And I'm just starting to feel like, is that good enough? And she got taken off, and that's been happening. And then she gets put back on at wing defence, and that feels like her more comfortable position, and she's effective there. But it puts then a lot of pressure on Susie Liversidge, who then handles a lot of ball. And then I think one thing that looked really obvious from this game was that Emma Thacker looks more comfortable when she's a goal shooter.
I couldn't agree more. 100%.
And so that Thacker-Andrew combination at the start with Ellie Ratu feeding it, I think let Mavericks down early. So then they were chasing. And it's okay that they're chasing, because they've chased quite a lot, and they've caught teams back up. But it's not the position you want to be in with the calibre of player that they have, I think. Like, you know, I think Tamsin has been on the pod and talked about having a young team and that being an identity and for Mavericks, and they want to build this group. But I would expect someone like Ellie Ratu to be progressing and getting better. And I don't know if you've noticed, Paul, but on the Super League website, we now have stat leaders for everybody, including errors, and I think Ellie sits at the top of that. So look, it's a netball team, everybody is accountable to everybody else, but I just think that was quite, to me, that's sticking out now. And then on top of that, Amy Hepworth-Wayne, I think, is now officially, right, as I understand.
She is, yeah, that's official.
So interesting, is it not, that you've replaced a circle defender with a centre wing defence? So maybe I'm just going to put that out there. Like, whoop. Clearly, Mavericks know they have a bit of a weak spot with their circle, and I have been quite. I've said a lot of times it's a goal attack problem, but I think it could still be a bit of a goal attack problem, as in it could be two players that are not kind of doing their job properly, or like doing it, executing it as well as they could be. Maybe let's be fairer with that, but it just sort of put Pulse in this leading position early. And I think what part of the reason why Forest had so much fun against Pulse was that they were able to get into it early and put Pulse in an awkward position early on. And though Pulse sort of did have a bit of a wobbly maybe in the third quarter, and like you said, sort of things came back, and it wasn't in the bag by any means. Like, Pulse are psychologically better than they were in that Forest match. So and to your point about the arena, I did go to the OVO last year, and it is weird, the layout. I think Mavericks then had Thunder, and I think they got steamrolled, if I remember the game. But yeah, it's an interesting space. But great to see it being used, great to have this kind of derby, and as you say, much better result than the last time we saw these two teams. But it's still out by 10, so Mavericks maybe again miss an opportunity for a bonus point, given that it did.
So that was going to be my point, as you came back to me there. I felt like maybe again, we've mentioned this before, and Tamsin mentioned it. We know that the team is kind of a young team. There's a bigger picture here, but I do felt like I think they were 4 behind on their centre pass. Pulse had taken a single goal to get that to 4, and it was in the super shot zone at the end, super shot window at the end of the final quarter. And you thought, if Mavs can get a super shot here, and we've seen them do it loads of times, this game is going to get very close, like down the stretch. They made a mistake at the front end. I think it was Gracie Smith pinched the ball. I can't remember if there was maybe a little bit of a miscommunication at the Mavs attack end. Pulse took it down and scored to just go out to 5. And it felt to me, watching it at home, that Mavs heads visibly dropped, and actually there was still a point to play for there, right? And I feel like maybe there was an element of inexperience to think, oh, we've lost the game now, and very naturally your shoulders kind of drop. But actually, given the battle that is going to transpire for those top 4 places, we think now between Mavs and Forest, I wonder if they'll just look back on those last 3 minutes where they kind of just lost a bit of focus that could have delivered them a point. And we've spoken a lot about the rules and the different implications of things this year. I think that was a really good example of where playing to the end, and I'm not saying they didn't, of course they did, but I felt like they felt they had lost the game in that moment, whereas actually there was still a point to play for, which I don't know, it felt like that to me.
Yeah, well, it's hard progress, like from the outside, because the scoreline is not what it was in the previous meeting, and it did fluctuate. But I just wonder what's kind of the bigger plan with Mavericks, with this starting 7, with this shooting circle, what we're going to do now. And we've now had 2 quite strong performances from Rothwell now that she's back at goal attack, and Thacker at goal shooter, and it's a combination that has been tried and tested by Mavericks before. So, and I think at Pulse, were they together at Pulse at one point, those 2, I believe? Yeah, so it's I don't know where that puts Emily Andrew, because she's been really strong, and had a moment.
There's almost a plethora of options there, isn't there? And it's trying to boil that down to the right combinations
at the right time, because there's also Amelia Hall too in there. So but we want to, like as you said, with what's at stake, Mavericks now can't afford to be sort of having this like, well, what do we do? It should be an exciting thing, and it feels like right now maybe it's a bit of an Achilles heel. Like that game I think Mavericks could have taken that game if they'd started stronger. But anyway, it was an interesting one, and London is pink.
London is pink. First ever double for Pulse over Mavericks, which surprised me a little bit. That but I do think it's worth reflecting on Pulse, who are coming through their challenges at the moment. We know the Forest game is the Forest game, and I spoke to Sam for the website before the game, and she'd said they'd worked really hard on their connections through the week, and she said that in the interview after the game. Like, she spoke about kind of going over and over and over it, and I thought in the main, those connections that have been such a success for them this season were working. I do think it's interesting to see that almost the first change for Pulse is to bring Gracie Smith on as a centre for Tyler Orr. Maybe that's a question we can ask Sam, or I can ask Sam before the next preview. But it feels like that's a very deliberate plan to sort of bring the speed and the height to the middle of the court, and whether that's to upset the apple cart or try and change some dimensions. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid all round performance from Pulse, and Fumi and Hallie seem to be back to their very best as well in defence. I thought Fumi was outstanding for probably the second week in a row now, like second victory in a row at least. Like she feels like she's seizing the moment as we kind of enter the business end of the season.
Yeah, still a lot of penalties by the Pulse defending end. So
I think that's the nature of how they play, right? I feel like
Sure, yeah.
product.
My only concern for them is that with certain umpires, it gets them in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's perfectly
So,
fair. Yeah.
not in this case, in this game necessarily, but Hallie Matt was on 17, Fumi on 13, Zara on 12. So they combined for 42 penalties out of, well, Liv Sheen had 2, Nicole 2, Liz Scholes 3, Gracie Smith 6. So that's quite a lot. It's quite chunky. And if we are, if you're sitting at the top of the table and you want to look at things you might want to improve on, that would be something I think polls ought to be looking at going forwards, whether or not they can get away. I think sometimes they do get away with it. They carry the physicality well, but we have seen a couple of games in this season that it's not really gone very well for them. So something to look at. And I think the bright spots for me for Mavericks, because I did go in, would be I thought Raz Quashie, another great game. Did some good stuff on Liv Sheen. They know each other incredibly well. So that's what from England, and I think Izzy Phillips as well. Given that I think she lost the matchup quite significantly to Liz Scholes in the first round. I think this time she was better prepared and picked up some good ball at good moments. But yeah, I think there's a headache for Mavericks remains in that attack end.
I think it's also just a quick scan down their fixtures. They have Rhinos next, then they have Forest. That Forest game in 2 weeks' time looms really large now, doesn't it? When we see how the sort of table has shaken out. I think for Mavericks, the fact they have Rhinos and Panthers either side of it, they will feel is a good thing. That's not to do kind of two teams a disservice, but they will feel that is a run of games that if they were to come away from it with maximum points, they might feel they've sort of broken the back of that challenge. Conversely, obviously, if Forest are able to do something similar, and if you give me about 5 seconds, I'm going to look at Forest fixtures. Forest have Dragons and Lightning either side of the Mavericks game. So again, I think sometimes it's about putting those little runs together, and I think Mavs will have an eye on that as a chance to sort of maybe pull away a little bit. We shall see.
Yes, we shall see indeed. Right, to the last game.
Final game of the round.
Which I've got picky bits for. Yes. Forest 58, Thunder 74. Quite a significant win for Thunder after Forest sort of taking down Pulse. And for top 4, Thunder came into the game without Amy Carter, which is a huge loss. I think there was a picture by from Debbie Hallis on Instagram that sort of you had Lois Pearson, Paige Reed, and Amy Carter, 3 of them sat, and you just think, gosh, what a lot of an experience not to have in your team. But Thunder came through. They came through quite strongly in the end. I think tactically, very well put together this game plan by Manchester Thunder, and Forest kind of not really near that form that they were when they took Pulse. Paul, what do you reckon?
Yeah, we chatted a little bit just before we hit the record button, Chloe, and for me, I feel like this is probably what we asked. We should be realistic enough to admit that this is probably what we're going to get from Forest. Sometimes still they are a new team with a new coach, and while some of those connections are quite well established, they are finding their way still. So we've seen quite high highs and a few low lows, to be frank, on occasions this season. For me, though, the Thunder performance was, and this might seem like hyperbole, but I thought it was one of the most complete performances I've seen this season, which if you consider the injuries Thunder are dealing with, Chuck Amy Carter in the mix on that front as well. I thought they had a plan. They executed it brilliantly. I was pleased to note that my observation that they shut down Hannah Layton has made it into your clips, and you'll do it far more eloquently than I will and show it in a much better way. And I thought the plan was executed to perfection. And again, I do think it's worth calling out the youngsters a little bit as well, because they got a little bit of a tongue lashing from Karen Gregg the week before, who kind of said, we don't have a 60-minute goal attack. We know that sort of Anya Williams and Shannon Malik are learning on the go. and El Murray is having to be this experienced head at the attack end of the court, and she's adapting herself to that, and she's doing it brilliantly. Really, really impressive all-round performance. I didn't watch live. I saw the score before I saw the result and thought, blimey, that's impressive. And then when I saw the game, I was like, yes, that was very impressive.
Yes. Yeah, and actually, like, I think, spoiler alert, I just have centre pass defence. I didn't pick out the centre pass attack, but look, I can tell you now, when I was, Thunder, one of the great things, and actually, Yaz Brooks kind of pointed this out in commentary. She did a really good job of
I would say that. Yaz was
really
good.
of actually looking tactically about what was going on. But Thunder's, the variety of the centre pass attack was really important, because it just kind of kept Forest's defence like on their toes. But certainly Hannah Leighton was left a little bit in the dust a couple of times. She wasn't able to do what she did to Pulse and go up. And the same for Iona Christian as well, going really up for that pocket ball as much as they would have wanted. So that was one part of the equation. The other part is what I will show you with my my word art, my clip art, which I'll get open now. Okay, just the normal caveat for listeners. This will be happening on screen. Feel free to catch it on YouTube, or if you're on Spotify, get the video back up. So the centre pass defence, as it was, I think I did this for the first time, was against Thunder's Panthers. Thunder Panther game. It's a really big part. Like, Thunder really love to start their work early, and it makes sense because netball happens very quickly. But yeah, here we go. So the big thing, obviously, in this game for Thunder, when you face Forest, is that Rolene Stricker is your big threat. So you've got to do the work before it gets in. So breaking up the connections. Rhea Dixon and Brie Grierson have a really established partnership. The ball speed plus Iona Christian is when it fires, it goes so quickly, and I think Pulse were really caught out by that. So I think the instructions from Thunder were, let's get in front of that really early. Let's break up the connections between these players and slow it down. Give ourselves as much time as possible. And if it doesn't end in an intercept or a mistake or a deflection or something, you've just slowed things down. And particularly in super short time, that's really important. So anyway, enough of me. Break up connections and set up the box. This box thing, man, Paul, it's all over this league, right?
It is all over this league.
So, centre pass. Now, look at Taylor McKevitt, the way she gets right in front of Brie Grierson, slows that right up. And then she's going to follow Iona Christian down, stop that pass, ball goes back, empty space here. Brie Grierson runs into it. It's not happening. So Hannah Leighton gets the ball. She goes down into the pocket. And already it's got to go back out again because she's not happy with that feeding position. And it ends there because Taylor McKevitt gives a nice little shoulder barge. But you get the gist. Early on, the centre pass defence, all three are going to come up and they're going to come out to form, like, to just show Iona Christian at centre, this is not an option. Like, I'm right here. So it just slows everything up. So that was pretty... here's the second one. Now... I've hopped out onto this mode because it's just much easier for me to stop and start it. But here's another example of the centre pass defence. Now, Nicola Smith is going to run out with Freya Henshaw just to deny that as an option. So it's now Neve Cooper at centre because that change has happened, which is, I think, a win for Thunder at this point if you've taken Iona Christian off the court. And so Cooper goes out to Christian. Well, she's not taken her off court. She moved her into wing attacks. Brie Grierson's come off. That was the win. 1, 2, 3 in the line. And she's going to want to look to release that ball into Freya Henshaw. But she can't. Boxes up. Look at this empty zone here. Now, you're saying, well, Chloe, that's not empty. Freya Henshaw's in it. But then Freya Henshaw gets the ball because she's the only person with, inside the space. But then look at the sight that she then has. Thunder. And that's not great. That's certainly not what she wants. Yeah. And then Taylor McKevitt is covering this drive really, really well. So then Freya goes over. And actually, this is where you would expect Shannon Malik to challenge for this pass. She doesn't really quite. But look how far Hannah Leighton gets out that ball. So then Iona's going to try and run. Taylor McKevitt has that covered. That big empty space, that void is still there. So then she has to go all the way back to goalkeeper. Gosh, reset. But then look, reset, Thunder coming in right behind to push up high and push everybody together. And this is, as I said to you before we did this call, this is at the start of quarter 3. So Thunder have come out off the bench ready to absolutely attack this tactic. So it goes out, it goes, and then all of them in the middle, look, they're going to deny that middle channel, which Forest are really going to love. And then eventually I know Christian picks up the ball here and the ball goes in. But that was some effort, wasn't it? Here we are again, centre pass defence. We start that over here. The same thing happens. Taylor McKevitt is all over Bray Grierson. Just going to force that really, really high. Maybe a bit of contact there, but umpire didn't notice. So the ball hasn't travelled anywhere. Arms go up. And then look, you can see Bray Grierson is actually going to start directing traffic. She's saying, please, go left, go deep. But Emma Rayner has that covered. So then she's going to look over there and she's like, oh gosh, I can't. Just goes back. Thunder just reshuffle the box. And she say, again, somebody move. Freya Henschel gets the ball out over here. Taylor McKevitt comes right back. And look, this is just a dream scenario for any defence when you have all these players bunched together. It means you've done your job really well. So that's not on. It's nearly 3 seconds. Back it goes. Tash Pavlin has to control the pass. And then look, this whole middle channel empty. Thunder just completely denying access to it. Now, this is also, I think, this is just a great job. And then I think it's actually a contact by Emma Rayner that kind of kills that play. But like I said, it doesn't always end in a turnover or a penalty, but it's this kind of pressure, this kind of intensity that's just going to wear Forest down. This is another one. This was really early on. Taylor McKevitt, look, is going to come out. They're going to sandwich Brie Grierson. This is while Rhea Dixon is on, which is a really important connection to break up. Just get in front of that. So it just stops Brie being an option. And also a lot of wasted energy trying to get over the line to try and get that ball. So Iona Christian ends up giving it to her anyway, but only after that pressure sort of relented. And then it means Iona's all the way up here, and the only other person down here is Rhea Dixon, pardon. So she can't give that. So she goes lateral for that. Yeah. And this would have been something Thunder would have really liked to have actually won ball off, because you could see it now. But Nicola Smith, the switch that was happening there, do you see with Josie coming out? Yeah. Nick Smith, so close to that. So close, but doesn't quite get it. Rowley gets it home. Last one in this sort of theme. Again, look at Taylor McKevitt. Right in front and anticipating play, and then also behind her the attackers are doing the same sort of thing, getting right in front. And Eve Cooper's like, oh great, goes backwards, sideways. Here's our friend the box. Back it goes.
I feel like the box needs its own moment at the
end. It
does.
Of the season, it needs its own name, a theme music, doesn't it? An empty space here, everything being forced out to the sides. It's just so class. And it's got to go back again. And this, it's quarter 3. So if you see that whole middle channel, empty.
Yeah.
But what I liked about this one, though, is eventually... So it was important because Hannah Layton is ball side. So she's going to get this. And this is going to then help Freya Henschel, who's cut into the middle. And now you're going to see why Thunder do this, because look at all the passage that happens now in the middle. Rowling goes into the middle, and that just is where that's where Nottingham want the ball. And I think the thing is, while it's condensed, it means all Thunder are all on the outside. So that's what happens sort of when the tactic breaks down a little bit, is that it is then just a straight line into the goal. Now, sometimes you just win the ball. On the centre pass defence, this is. Look, Nicola Smith.
That contender for episode title as well, right?
I want to play that back. Okay, look, this, I didn't really explain this slide very well, but yes, sometimes the defender just wins the ball. This was the Nicola Smith, who I think is growing every game, just increasingly a menace, particularly when she's out in the centre third. But on this one, she fancied it. So she went in and she got right in front of Brie Grierson and followed her. What a ball to try and give from Iona Christian. Very brave. Well, if Nick Smith doesn't get it, India Massa's going to get it. Thanks. I'll take that again on my score sheet. Picks it up. And then this one. And this wasn't off a centre pass, but an example of where the tactic still happens through the court. So I think this was a turnover. And you're just going to see the box and the pressure coming on. And it's just going to go backwards. And Taylor McKevitt's going to go, no thanks. That's such good cover. And it just forced the error. And that's basically what ended up happening a lot in that game, which is errors and pressure. So yeah, that was that.
Good
Well
illustration
done.
of how sort of Forest were forced out of that middle channel as well, isn't it? I think you could have done an entire section on that. Well, I think we spoke about it before that Forest really likes to play down that middle channel, and the Brie rear axis is so strong when everything's flowing and that whole process is working. And that's a really good way to just illustrate how kind of Thunder took that out of the equation, and it left Forest kind of searching for answers a little bit. And I thought both Brie and Rhea weren't at their best, but that wasn't their own fault. I think it was because of the way Thunder forced Forest to play.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Rhea is actually normally such a big part of that cut front middle to with Brie. Like Brie will get the centre pass, and Rhea just won't even often try and compete on the centre pass and cut back. But the other thing that people will have noticed as well, and we've talked about it a bit on the pod, is Rhea shot 0 from 2 in that game. And she was being rotated off with Freya Henschel quite a lot too, and Freya sort of did her role in the 2-point shot quite well, but I don't think it was a great performance from Rhea Dixon in that one, whereas she was she played quite a big role in that win against Pulse. So that's, again, as you can see with that tactic, like, yeah, you set up you deny the middle channel, but you separate out these players that normally play with ball speed together off each other, and that did happen in this game. I don't want to say that it didn't happen, but it just happened way less than it was supposed to. And there were some misses as well, a couple of misses from Rolene that just kind of let Thunder, like, okay, we'll just add here. And in the end, the scoreline did kind of blow out, actually. Like, it was a bit closer than in the game. I think it was, like, they were still very competitive. But that final quarter, the sort of Thunder really put their foot down a bit like Pulse did to Mavericks as well.
I think that's part of, I certainly remember when I was learning more about like the top level of netball and I started covering it. It's like there are, it's a goal for goal game broadly. Like the point is it goes backwards, forwards off the centre passes. So there are going to be moments where your opposition are going to do the things that they're good at. It's about how many times you can kind of minimalise that and kind of take that out. And I think that's what, you kind of take 10 possessions. I think Thunder did a really good job of stopping maybe 50-60% of them as opposed to just 10 or 20% of them, if that makes sense. And I think that's where we're seeing defences evolve. And I do think that is always where the titles are won and lost. Like, I do think it comes down to how you can adjust to that ability to stop the opposition doing what they do to score their goals.
Totally. And the other thing probably ought to be said is that we saw Nick Smith at goalkeeper for the first time with Elliot McCormick at goal defence. And that was menacing, I think, because Elliot McCormick is like an Energizer bunny. So interesting to see Josie Huckle come off, actually, because she's been such a focal point of that defence end. But Nicola Smith is still a problem.
They've got options back there now, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. So it's just that they'll just be waiting for those shooters to come back in. Yeah. But an interesting one for Forest for sure to sort of look back at, and what's plan B? How does that look? Because they did roll the dice. We actually saw Jada Pekova out at goal defence. Is that also happened? Tash Pavlin went to wing defence, and Farida Kadonde came on at goalkeeper. So Chelsea was also trying things to instigate change. It was a lot. It's been a while since we've seen Kadonde, and I did think she actually had good impact when she came on. But I just think they were chasing too much at that point against a team that were too good to cough up too much. Well, there we go, Paul. That was all the games from the round. I think that starts to put us in a bit of a position. We kind of alluded to it earlier, but that top four could start taking shape this weekend, right? You tell me, you're the numbers man.
Are you talking permutations?
I fear I am.
I will take you back several years. And my first job at Sky Sports was as a football statistician, as I think I've said on a few occasions. And the dreaded question of permutations would come up around about 7 or 8 weeks out from the end of the season. And it's like, well, how many more points do they need to secure top four or the title or whatever it might be, or to be safe? And I would hate it, but I would have to do it.
Wait, that was not the crux of your job, though. You just hate it.
No. And also, I will say that what became very easy, we had a tool called League Builder, which built the league tables. That wasn't in place when I first started. That did make it much more easier to be able to work things out. I'm presuming that we may not get an update on who needs to do what. And there are still sort of 5 rounds left of action, so there are still a few variables. So if I've done my early maths correct, I think the simplest equation, and that was always how I used to deliver this information, is if Pulse win and Forest lose, Pulse will secure a top 4 place. And I think the simplest part of that is Pulse winning would take them to 27. Not least, it would give them a win over Lightning as well. We'll get into the preview in a second. But if Forest were to lose, they would only have 4 games left, which would mean 12 points. So they could only get to 25. And that wouldn't mean Pulse couldn't drop below the top 4 places, basically. So in its simplest form, Pulse win, Forest lose, Pulse would be the first team to secure their top 4 place.
Interesting.
Adds another little dimension to that Pulse Lightning game, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? And it's a home game too, right? But if Lightning get a bonus point and it's a Lightning loss, that doesn't affect with the 2 people we're talking about here of Forest and Pulse, right?
Yes, because even if Lightning won that game, Lightning would get to 25 points, which would take them top of the table. However, if Forest lost their game, as we've mentioned, and we're not taking into account the bonus point at the moment, if Forest were to just lose their game straight up with no bonus point, they would be able to get to 25 points. Now, the goal difference is so big that technically Lightning would have secured a top 4 place, but would not be 100% secure, even though it would take a swing of the most unlikely factors. The only thing I haven't worked out yet, and everyone will have to forgive me this because I've been busy all weekend, is Mavericks play Forest, and I haven't done the scenarios for if that was a bonus point defeat for one of the other teams, or if that might be enough to caveat it. But we can say for certain, I think 99% certain, that a Pulse win and a Forest defeat will secure Pulse a top 4 place. Lightning would probably be all but in if they win and Forest lose. So let's just deal with it next week, Chloe.
Yes, yeah, of course. But interesting that we can know at this stage. I think that's what we'll just put it out there, won't we? And lead us in quite nicely to the preview, I suppose.
I think that's fair, and we should probably start with that game, first against second. It's the biggest game of the weekend. Well, actually, it's not. I won't be there because I will be in Sheffield for England Netball Under-14 National Finals, which will be the biggest games of the weekend. So you'll forgive me if I play a lot of very intense catch-up next week, Chloe. I'll have to give my daughter and her team, Turnford, a shout-out. We're all very nervous at the moment. So the
second biggest game of the weekend.
So the second biggest game of the weekend, thank you. is London Pulse against Loughborough Lighting. A repeat of their game earlier in this season where Pulse were, by some distance, I think it's fair to say, the best team in that game. They came away with a 77-51 victory, if you remember rightly, at the Copper Box, all the way back in not the Copper Box, sorry, the David Wallace Arena. I think this will be a really kind of, I don't want to use the word interesting because we always use the word interesting, but a real yardstick, there you go, of where both teams are, because we feel Loughborough have come a very long way since that defeat and are much more consistent in their team. And we feel like Pulse are obviously a team who have found a way, more specifically over the last few weeks, and it will be a very interesting matchup to see how it shakes out.
Totally. I mean, these two teams have, in the last kind of 3 years, developed such a rich history. Like, it sounds ridiculous to sort of put it that way, but it's been so fierce, and this still feels as fierce as those games. There'll be a lot of pride on the line, particularly because of, as you described last time, and I'm recalling my comments then, where I think that the game sort of Pulse won it retrospectively in the second quarter because they got so far. They used a super shot so early and so effectively. But this Lightning team is different because it didn't have Samantha Wallace-Joseph in it, and it's just such a big factor, I think, in how this game goes. And it'd be really, really interesting to see Hallie and Fumi deal with that. And I think they've absolutely got the weaponry to be able to do that. I think they could match up really well, actually, as in, I think while Samantha Wallace-Joseph is a great threat, I think those two as a defending unit, if you're going to back anybody to try and unpick that and force a change, it will be those two. So that would be really interesting. We know that I think you can quite confidently say that Everett Joseph is just going to be a really important battle, not least because, as I said, the way Wallace-Joseph cites Joseph, so many Josephs. Yeah. It's like the Bible out here. But that is really important connection. So I would be minded to try and just keep Hannah Joseph bothered off the circle edge. Never let her settle on the circle edge. Never let it, just in a way that sometimes can happen in netball because it's such a default thing to do. It's just your wing defence way attack, wait on the circle edge while the players go. Like, you just can't be doing that. So yeah, I think a really a big one. I think Liv and Alice go way back, don't they? They are old friends, old rivals. So yeah, I think Nicole Britt as well so much got the better of Shadeen Vanderberber the first time. Will she do that again? I don't know. That'd be a good one. But yeah, lots of matchups.
I think the element there, and I was going to say exactly what you just said there, would be whether they decide to Lightning, that is, whether they decide to change it up, because they do have the option, and I'm just looking at my starting sevens information here, to play Jodie Gibson at goal defence. Jodie Gibson has started 2 games this season. That was against Dragons and against Mavericks. And I wonder if it might be a slightly different approach that might make Lightning tackle the sort of speed and playmaking ability of Nicole a little bit more. Because it was very one-sided in the first game. But obviously, Lightning have come a very long way since round 2. Yeah, and Shadeen has kind of picked up player of the matches, left, right, and centre. So to upset that kind of balance would feel strange. But I just wonder if that round 2 game will play a big part in what they're doing.
There's also a sense of keeping the powder dry, which was an expression we used a tremendous amount when Thunder and Pulse played. But what versions of these teams can we see? What are they not going to play? Just think it's going to be so fascinating. Just because it'd be so tempting to go all in and try and win this, just for points of pride for both sides.
Which is why we did just, I sort of half tongue in cheek mentioned the permutations at the start, but that does add an extra element to this game, because clearly you want to secure your place in the top 4 as soon as possible. And from both teams' point of view, sort of Lightning have played Thunder twice now. Pulse still have to play Thunder in Manchester, and they've obviously got Lightning this weekend. So You don't want to lose too much momentum, and if you can get your top 4 spot secured, and with it extend that advantage that they've got at the top of the table, because we know because of the new format, finishing first does give you 2 bites of the cherry, and it gives you home advantage, which I feel like is going to be significant. We'll see how it shakes out. I'm gutted to be missing the game. I think it'll be very, very good.
I think you have a good enough reason.
Duty call.
I think it's okay. We'll forgive you for skipping the second biggest game of the weekend.
What do we think is the third biggest game of the weekend then, Chloe?
Ooh, great question. So to be clear, that one's at Sunday 6 p.m.
Yes, sorry, Sunday 6 p.m. Yeah.
So it's actually we have a bit of a nightmare. We have a dub screen minimum on the Sunday.
Oh, we do, yeah.
Yeah, because we got 3 games Sunday, 4 p.m, 6 p.m, 6:30. So, oh my God. Okay, I'm not really sure. I'm going to pick out Dragons Forest. It's the Friday game, 7 p.m. Interesting one, because it's now a very, very real banana skin. Is Dragons. And I think the questions of Forest, Thunder just went, and we'll do this. And it did that. So that would be a really, really big one. I think, again, a different, like Alex Johnson and Rolene, I don't think they would have met yet in that position because of what happened to Leah Middleton. It feels crazy that we're coming back round. So that will be key. I think Elle McDonald, Brie Grierson, given what we've seen Thunder do, given how well Elle McDonald played on Jess Shaw, that's going to be quite key. And then Jada Pekova on George Rowe, like that shooting threat. To me, a lot also of Dragon's success rides on how locked in Philippa Yarrington is. I think by definition she's locked in. Like, she's definitely that kind of girl, but it's like, to what level? If she's I think Dragons will cite this as a game that they want and that they want to take. So I think it's a big away trip for Forest. I think they've got the means to beat Dragons, but I just think now, after that loss and that Dragons win, that this feels different. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I think it does feel different. I think this Dragons team have been growing, and while we've only got 5 rounds of action left, I feel that they will think, actually, we could do it a few more rounds because we're rounding into some nice form here. I think they'll see it as winnable as well, which is like, takes it beyond almost a banana skin. It's like on the face of it, and they all are, obviously, like a super competitive game. And I think the fact that Forest were so good against Pulse, but then pretty disappointing, I think. And again, we've caveated that by saying they were made to be disappointing. They will be determined to bounce back. Now, I can see a situation where if Forest get everything right and their speed through the court is as it was against Pulse, they will have a little bit too much for Dragons. But equally, I can't see that Dragons defence allowing teams now to play through them with any sort of speed. I think Johnson, McDonald, and Newton have got such a good understanding, and we touched on it at the top of the show, that I feel like they are going to make it hard for Forest. So the question is, as you pointed out, can Forest kind of adapt if they're shut down in playing the way they want to play? And I think that is something that we will see evolve over the next few weeks. It will ask some questions of Forest, it will ask some questions of Chelsea. And for that reason, I think it's a good pick as the third biggest game of the weekend. I think it's an interesting look. Might be the only game I can actually watch in real time this weekend as well. So
I think the other one is the super shot. That's the only other big advantage that Forest have.
Clearly, yeah.
Just Rolene's ability to put them away. And for anybody that is interested in shooting stats, I will refer you to Queen Jean Roberts, who has put together an unbelievable set of data, including how time to go. She's been timing manually because we don't have access to minutes. So it's just an unbelievable set. And Rolene Stricker, no one will be surprised to see, is sort of sat at that top of the table. Her super shot percentage, her accuracy ball, I think, is at actually outrageous. Jean has come out with this, which I just think is unbelievable. I'm just going to read you Rolene from the top because that's, the player in question. But 9 appearances, 282 goals from 311 attempts. So that's 91%. This is in the 1 point, the single goal. In the super shot, she shot 95 from 124. So 77%.
3 and 4. That's the simplest way to look at that, roughly.
Just a bit better than 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And then goals, so 377 from 435. So she's 87% overall. She scored 472 points since being in the Super League. She's played 535 minutes. That means that she's scoring 1.13 goals a minute.
Love those numbers. Just numbers in general, to be honest.
And I think
And if you're 1 minute, Chloe, if you're not following Jean, follow her. She's excellent.
Unbelievable. I mean, the work is incredible. And just as a point of comparison, I think in the Super Shot, because that's what we're talking about in this context, is the next best shooter is Elmarie van der Berg in the Super Shot. She, in terms of volume and accuracy, because I think that's what's really important, is you have to contextualize all these things. She has shot 60 super shots from 91 attempts, so she's on 66%. And that Rolene isn't the most accurate. That goes to Kira Rothwell, but Kira Rothwell obviously has not played anywhere near the minutes that Rolene has had. So I think just an unbelievable athlete.
And you identified this early in the season, Chloe, but there is that caveat that if one team is on and one team is off in super shot time, you can pick out all the key battles in the world, but the very nature of 2 versus 1 is going to see the scoreline stretch out.
And that's the only thing in this game that could still very much happen.
Really fair point.
Yeah. Okay, Paul, you can pick the next one.
The 4th biggest game. I feel like I've got to see this through now.
We're like a Monty Python, aren't we, somehow?
Yeah, I think it would be very easy to just sort of kind of almost bracket these 2 games together. But I'm going to go for Rhinos against Mavericks, partly because I think I want to see, and I think I've convinced myself that this is the game to watch based on what we've sort of spoken about Mavericks. I think are they going to change? Because they haven't changed too much, injury aside, in their starting lineup this season. But with Kira Rothwell now back, Emma Thacker providing a shooting option, with Amy Hepworth-Wain now a permanent member of the squad. To clarify, she is the permanent replacement for Vicky Oyasola, who was injured in round 2 or 3, if I remember correctly. Obviously Amy Hepworth-Wain is now permanent replacement, and as we identified earlier, she gives them a proper change-up option now, and a really experienced. I always thought she was one of the most underrated players in the league when she was in it to start with, whether that was as a centre or as a wing defence, and she now gives Mavericks some serious options in there, and does Camilla kind of bite the bullet and make a change or two. I think that will be an interesting subplot to this game. Rhinos, I think now it's about kind of almost looking forward, and I think Lauren will be looking to get as much out of this squad as she can down the stretch and think, okay, who do I want with me going forward? I think that's where Rhinos are at the moment.
Yeah, this game obviously in the first time round was really close. I think this was also the game that Chelsea Blackman got injured in, and so it was like Mavericks, the sort of narrative at the start of the season was player goes down injured, they rally back. And that won't happen. Well, fingers crossed nothing like that happens this time. But I think they've both been on very different journeys since that game, since it was really close. It'd be really interesting to kind of see how they come back to it. But for me, when you mention Rhinos, for me, it's them stringing it together. Like, they still have really great players that can do great things. Like Joyce Mavula is still an absolute weapon. So they won't go down easily, like, to Mavericks. And I think if Mavericks cough up errors like they were and have been, then this isn't going to be easy for them. So I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of how they're going to start. Are they going to keep committing to that same sort of starting 7 that they have been rolling out? or are they going to decide actually this is too important? Maybe let's make some changes now and go forwards with it, because we actually just have to win, because they do really have to win if they want to get into that top four. Given that, as you keep pointed out when we were permeation chat earlier, how important like Forest getting that win over Dragons is going to be. These are both two games that these teams both need to be winning, so it'd be really interesting. They've got to travel away as well for that. So I do think that Raz Quashie, Gemma Donahue as a partnership that was not supposed to be, it's doing incredibly well, and I think Izzy Phillips is a really great sort of complement to that. So I think they're going to do a good job on Joyce Mavula and whoever the goal attack might be, whatever Lauren decides to start with, whether it's Sophia Barron or if it's Harriet Jones. But yeah, I still think Beth Britton is the target. She's got to be. You got to sort of starve the ball going in. So tactically, Mavericks have been quite astute. So let's see how it goes. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting game.
I think it almost as well assumes added importance, and I didn't realise it was going to be in round 11. So basically, after this weekend, the Forest and Mavericks go head to head. It feels like that essentially becomes almost a quarter-final match. You would think, because of the difference, particularly if say Mavs drop points this weekend and Forest were to pick them up, it almost becomes a shootout, right? And I feel like maybe every game obviously is taken on its merits, but there will be an eye looking forward to that game, and it's like, can we put 2 wins back to back, because it might be the difference between making top 4 and not making top 4, which might have made me push it further up the rankings now all of a sudden. It feels like it's bigger. One game left, and that is Manchester Thunder against Birmingham Panthers. Manchester Thunder in Liverpool, no less.
No way. On the others, on the other side. Well, as it were, I don't know. But very exciting for them to go back to where the World Cup was.
Cool venue, wasn't it? We were both at the World Cup. It's a really good venue.
A lovely area, and I think they've been, as a club, doing lots of activations up there, trying to really spread the word that they're coming over. And it's a great. And I guess Panthers hosted Thunder at the Commonwealth Games venue,
Yes.
so it's sort of a very one for you and one for you, which is a deference, which is nice for the newcomers to the league. But tactically, Thunder was so good last time these two teams played. They really, really isolated, exposed. They did a great job on their centre pass defence to really make the ball into Ziggy Berger a problem. We don't know, I suppose, Paul, the situation with Gabby Sinclair, because they played without Gabby Sinclair last time. Will she be back in? I don't know. That would be, I think, if Panthers have that, it would be an extra added threat, which would be very helpful to take out a Thunder hitting its straps and really kind of growing. I would also say that Jazz Brown has come on really, really well in the last sort of few games. So I think she'll be a different challenge than what she was previously to sort of El Murray, who I assume will start a goal shooter given the goal attack situation. But maybe not. Who knows? But whoever it is, I think Jazz is just a different prospect to what she was. So that defending end might win more ball than it did the first time round, which might make this game more interesting. But I do think Thunder probably you'd pick to win this. No, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. I've got a question for you though, Chloe.
Go on.
How many times do you think Manchester Thunder have named an unchanged team from one week to the next this season?
How many times? 2?
Yes, that is correct. They've only been able to name an unchanged team from one week to the next twice. Now that's injury and obviously some tactics. But I wonder if maybe we see a third this time out, because that was such a complete performance last time out. Probably is going to hinge on the fitness of Amy Carter, right? If Amy's fit, you would expect Amy starts. But I do think Thunder have shown by moving Emma Rayner into that position, I feel like she's the breakthrough start this season. We didn't do breakthrough star in our awards, that she would be my breakthrough star of the year. I think she's
already.
brilliant.
Well, we were doing mid-season, so
we were doing mid-season, so maybe we'll have to come up with a full-on awards ceremony for the end of the season. We'll have to wear dicky bows and full
the
gowns.
graphics department is going to be so busy.
But look, I think it also stacks up, right? It shows that Thunder can be kind of flexible in their approach, sometimes through necessity and sometimes through choice. So whether Amy's fit or not, I think will be one to watch. But I just thought that was interesting. We look at the consistency of sort of I suppose a Pulse and a Lightning, Van der Merwe and Gibson aside, and that Thunder lineup has been much changed, pretty much all the way through the year.
Nicola Smith as well. They didn't have Nick Smith when they played Panthers the first time, and she, yeah, I mean, I think I kind of slightly waxed a bit lyrical earlier about her, but I just think that we seeing her now at goalkeeper, we kind of imagined the possibility of switching, of having the Jodie, Nicola, Elia sort of back three, but it's just all the combinations that could be born out of that, with Taylor McKevitt, who I think has been doing a great job in that wing defence role. And I think when we talk about how Thunder have been consistent, I think she's been quite a large part of that, in terms of and particularly with Amy gone, she's been, a Thunder player for a little while now, but I think delivering the tactics at wing defence, attack and defence, I think she's done a really good job at that. And so I do think this will be a tough one for Panthers, and I wonder how training's gone this week for them as well, given what happened with Dragons. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that would have been a game that would have been tough to lose.
Yeah, how you bounce back, I think, is always a measure of sort of your setup and your culture, and we've spoken about that a lot. And obviously, we spoke about it with Jace about creating that identity. But I think Panthers have it, and I think it'd be interesting to see how they come out in what will be a tough game in a tough environment, right? It'll be good. Thunder will have done a good job selling the game to Liverpool.
And that Panthers lineup is going to be quite changed as well throughout the season.
I was literally just looking through that now on my starting sevens.
They only had the three Gabbies once.
So are you talking about the Panthers lineup for the first Thunder game?
No, I'm just thinking more broadly in the season. We waited for Gabby Sinclair to arrive. Gabby Sinclair arrived. Right, Gabby Marshall was out initially with Jiva, and then I don't think Sinclair actually started the game where all three of them were available, but I think then Marshall then took a head knock then. So it's just interesting, as we were saying earlier, it's sport and these things happen where you can have the best laid plans when you're building your strategy, you're recruiting your teams. I guess to maybe go full circle and go all the way back to our Jace conversation at the top of the show, but you can do all of that hard work, make all of those plans, and then sport happens, injuries happen, life happens, and as a club, it's how you adapt and what you do with the situations as presented to you. So if this sport is anything, it's resilient.
It has to be, right? We've learned that much covering it.
Yes, indeed.
That's round 10 then. Round 10 in the books. I think that's probably about it then, Chloe, isn't it? To be fair, we've all bases covered.
Yes. News, review, preview. Shout out for Kira and her netball game.
Yes, of course.
Good luck to her.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm also wondering, Paul, have you clocked my mug at all during this?
I saw you, but I didn't get a chance to look at it properly. Is it?
Can you see this?
Is it Jamaica netball?
It is. So, for those that watched the internationals earlier this year, there was a lady in the crowd that had two bin lids that she was banging like cymbals relentlessly. And I just thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. And my friend got it on a mug for me. This is the energy. So
is that the merch department that we've now got as well, Chloe?
I mean, I don't know if I want anyone else to have this mug. No, I don't know. Maybe we do have a merch department. No, let's do it. But yeah, I think that's
t-shirts, bobble hats.
Jamaican fan on mug.
Jamaican fan, yeah, tremendous. I saw it, but I was like, I don't know what that is.
No, it's niche. It's very niche. I like my netball merch niche.
Okay.
I have another niche piece one day I'll show you, but it's
okay. Good to know. I should look forward to this.
Yeah, maybe I'll slide it in and see if you notice. But yeah, I think that's the energy that we'll be channeling for Kira this weekend.
Thank you very much. That's
pots and pans.
I'll report back next week. I believe. I know that Lauren Palmer will be there for a period. She told us as much, didn't she? Because they are playing just around the corner at the weekend. They're in Sheffield, and the netball finals are at Sheffield. So I'll see if I can grab a word with Lauren while I'm there before she takes off. But I'm looking forward to it. I think the under-16s tournament was a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to give a shout out to Eagles, who beat Kingsway Power, I think, in the final there, which we didn't mention. I think, as we evolve this pod, it would be quite nice to maybe get stuck into some of that grassroots element at times, and at least kind of keep an eye on what's going on there. I suspect Eagles and Kingsway will be serious contenders this weekend as well. That's my research already, but we shall see. Very competitive age group under 14. It's super good to watch as well. So I believe you can watch it on England Netball as well. You can stream it.
Nice. Yeah, well, it's good to know that the future of English netball is looking good. It's in a healthy way. All right.
That means farewell. On that note, farewell.
Thank you. Goodbye.